We will now discuss the nitrogen cycle. This paragraph describes the steps and changes that are involved in the cycling of nitrogen in nature. Please browse through it and then we'll discuss the various aspects of this cycle next. So have a minute or two to quickly read this paragraph and then use the figures next to describe the changes that are happening in the recycling of nitrogen in nature. Okay, we can always come back and read this. So let's go straight to discussing the various changes that are taking place. Some of the salient points made here are as follows. 1. Nitrogen is used by living organisms to make proteins and nucleic acid that are essential for life. Nitrogen is a stable molecule and it does not react with other molecules unless it is furnished with a minimum amount of energy to zap its bonds. For molecules to react, their bonds must first be broken. The Haber-Bosch process describes how nitrogen and hydrogen react to form ammonia. In this process, the gases must be subjected to a very high temperature between 400 to 650 degrees Celsius and a pressure of 400 to 600 atmosphere for the reaction to happen. This illustrates how extremes of conditions are required for nitrogen to react with other molecules. There are two processes by which nitrogen molecules are fixed naturally. One is by lightning furnishing the energy to break the triple bonds of the nitrogen molecule. See, nitrogen is a triple bonded molecule, and that is what makes it so unreactive. So when lightning strikes this molecule here, it provides enough energy to zap it, so we form nitrogen atoms here. In this case, nitrogen now will willingly react with other molecules such as oxygen to form various oxides of nitrogen. When these oxides enter the soil, they are acted upon by nitrifying bacteria there and they are converted to nitrate ions. From the soil, the roots of plants will absorb the nitrate ions and use them to make their proteins and nucleic acids. So that's the first way in which nitrogen is fixed, by the use of lightning. A second way is by nitrogen fixing bacteria found in the root nodules of leguminous plants. So here we see now atmospheric nitrogen in the presence of nitrogen fixing bacteria found in the root nodules of these leguminous plants combined with oxygen to form nitrate ions. So what will happen now? Again, the bacteria will use some of the nitrate ions for their own metabolism, and whatever is left in the soil is then used by the plant to make their proteins and nucleic acid. Of course, herbivorous animals will eat plants and they will assimilate plant proteins and plant nucleic acid into their proteins and nucleic acid. And the same thing, of course, will happen when carnivorous animals eat the herbivores. Eventually, plants and animals will die and their bodies will enter the soil. The main nitrogenous excretory products of animals are urea and uric acid. In the soil, the dead bodies of these organisms are degraded by decomposers. And the excrement here, the urea and uric acid, along with the dead bodies of these organisms, through a process called ammonification, ammonia is produced. So all these urea and uric acid and other compounds found in the dead bodies of plants and animals change to ammonia. Now what will happen now is that the ammonia now eventually will be changed to nitrate ions by a set of bacteria called nitrifying bacteria. These are aerobic bacteria that use molecular oxygen from air to change ammonia into nitrate ions. It's also useful to know that during these decomposition processes, some minerals and other compounds are produced. Some will enter the soil, and some gases, so the sulfur dioxide and other smelly gases and stuff like that, will enter the atmosphere. But we are now interested in nitrate ion here. So, of course, this nitrate ion will enter the soil, and again, they'll be absorbed by plants to make their proteins and nucleic acid. The nitrogen cycle, as exemplified by these different steps here. So, first of all, atmospheric nitrogen is fixed by lightning, okay, from oxides of nitrogen, and these, with the use of these nitrophile bacteria here, okay, aerobic nitrophile bacteria and molecular oxygen, these oxides of nitrogen are changed into nitrate ions that can be absorbed by the plants. Secondly, we have nitrogen-fixing bacteria in the root nodules of leguminous plants change nitrogen into nitrates. The leguminous plants will absorb that what's left over from the bacteria to make their own proteins and nucleic acids, such as DNA and RNA and stuff like that. When animals such as herbivores eat these, they assimilate these type of proteins there in DNA into their DNA. Okay? And again, like you said, they will die and they produce waste. Decomposers will change these parts of the dead animals and the waste through a process called ammonification into ammonia. And finally, the ammonia now, through a series of aerobic bacteria, a process called nitrification, will change the ammonia into nitrate ions. This is something similar to what is happening in the oxic zone. When we do a sewage treatment plant in the oxic zone, a similar thing is happening here where urea is changed to ammonia, and then ammonia is changed to nitrites, and then into nitrate ions. Finally, one little step more. Let us say that the soil now encounters anaerobic condition, such as happens when there is a water log. When there's a water log, the water takes up the space where air is supposed to be, so there's no oxygen entering the soil. So what will happen now is that it will encourage the proliferation of anaerobic bacteria. They will cause the nitrate ions to be decomposed into nitrogen gas. Why? Because these bacteria here, they will use the oxygen that's bonded to the nitrate ion here for their respiratory process. And this nitrogen is left all by itself and it gets recycled in nature. So basically, this is a nitrogen cycle. And if you want to make some notes or anything like that more about it, it's all described in words here. All the steps are described here. It speaks about nitrogen fixation, speaks about flashes of lightning, breaking up the nitrogen molecules into atoms, forming these oxides there. It's spoken about that eventually reach the soil where they change into nitrates. It speaks about the nitrogen fixing bacteria that change molecular nitrogen into nitrates, and plants will use those to make their proteins and DNA molecules. It speaks about assimilation. When the plants are eaten by animals, they make their own proteins and DNA from that of the plants, and they get assimilated into their bodies. It speaks about decomposition. The dead bodies of plants and animals, along with their excretory products, are changed to ammonia, and then ammonia is finally changed into nitrates. Nitrification, same thing, we described this already. And denitrification, if it encounters anaerobic conditions, as happens when there's a water log, all right, in the soil, that causes these anaerobic bacteria to use the oxygen connected to the nitrate ion for their cellular respiration, and the nitrogen gets freed up to go back into this. So we're saying here, left all by itself, there will be a nice balance between the amount of nitrogen taken from air and that returning, without causing any negative ecological consequences. However, with the use of nitrogenous and phosphorus fertilizer for greater food production, the cycle has been disrupted with serious ecological impacts. These fertilizers find their way into oceans and bodies of water from runoff from our agricultural lands, where they produce algal blooms with subsequent eutrophication of water. The loss of dissolved oxygen has seriously affected marine ecosystems, creating thousands of square kilometers of dead zone. So that was a nitrogen cycle and some of the implications of making man-made fertilizers. Okay. The carbon cycle. All right, it's very easy. Carbon is an essential part of most organic compounds in our body. It is essential part of carbohydrates, fats, protein, vitamins, nucleic acid. In nature, it is found as coal, in hydrocarbons, and other types of inorganic compounds. The following table summarizes different ways that carbon is recycled in nature, mostly by the removal of carbon dioxide in and out of the atmosphere. So just follow the table here. All right, we look at ways in which carbon enters the atmosphere. First of all, by cellular respiration, carbon is here, reacts with oxygen, produces carbon dioxide that diffuses into the atmosphere. Secondly, by combustion. Combustion of coal or hydrocarbons, or wildfires too, and from volcanic eruptions. So this shows the combustion of carbon produces carbon dioxide. Combustion of a hydrocarbon produces carbon dioxide. Carbon enters the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. What ways it is removed from the atmosphere? One, chiefly by photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide gets incorporated into water molecules through photosynthesis, and this is a carbon here in a glucose molecule. All right. By diffusion from the air, carbon dioxide can diffuse into water. It's constantly doing that. And it forms carbonic acid, aqueous there, and that can decompose into carbonate ions. And these carbonate ions can react with calcium ions to give you calcium carbonate. And this is how carbon finds itself deposited there. And you have fossilization, dead organisms. So this now is the cycle here. It just depicts what it just explained there. So this is carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, photosynthesis by plants is removed, diffusion into the water here. So two main processes by which carbon dioxide is removed from the atmosphere. Number of ways it can enter. They can decompose this guy here, carbonic acid. If it decomposes, it can produce some carbon dioxide here. Respiration gives carbon dioxide. Combustion gives carbon dioxide. Decomposition of dead body produces carbon dioxide. And of course, this guy at the bottom here show you how carbon get back into the earth through this process of fossilization. So that's the nitrogen and carbon cycle. I hope that was helpful to you. So we'll see you next time.